Oh, there we go. Now we're happening. Thank you. Aloha, John Farrell and Louise Mottee.
Mottee,
yes, from Tasmania. So we just wanted to cure a little insomnia, and we're going to ramble on here a little bit and just have some fun perfecting this video stuff and see how we do. But we wanted to talk about annulments. You were the one that introduced the topic, Louise, and I thought why not? Because that's the main thing. But I'm curious, though. You're married with 6 kids, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And why some interest in annulment on your part?
Well, that's a good question. I think just in the last 10 years in particular, but even probably in the last 15 years or so, it has sort of become apparent to me that that even within the church, marriage is under attack. And I was just feeling quite alarmed by the number of annulments that were being dished out, really, I couldn't quite see why, and it was really beginning to look like Catholic divorce, even though, of course, we know that strictly speaking, annulments are not divorce, but when they're given out so readily, so for instance, I have relatives who, sadly were abandoned by spouses or whatever. And so they ended up leaving the Catholic Church because they wanted to remarry and they knew they wouldn't be able to get an annulment. And that was how it was. I mean, you just couldn't get one. It was very hard to get one. Most people were not able to get one.
What year was that about, do you think?
Say again?
About what year do you suppose that was hard?
Oh, well, I mean, when things changed must have been, I guess, in the 80s after the change to canon law. But in terms of just socially, so we're talking about my elder relatives in the 60s and prior to that. I mean, that they just wouldn't have, they knew they wouldn't be able to get an annulment because they really were married, even though they were abandoned, and it was really sad, and they didn't want to be alone, and all those kinds of normal things that, people feel when these things happen to them. But we know that marriage is indissoluble, but yet we now have these very lax tribunals that are totally, basically, John, what really gets me is that these tribunals and the cretins who run them are attacking a sacrament. They're attacking a sacrament. You might as well just attack Jesus.
So you've got some common sense ideas but how do you plug them in? Because when you take what you're saying, and I can let you keep going, right? You're on a roll. So you're just kind of making sense. You're just sort of being normal, okay? So when you go see these cretins or whatever you over at the tribunal, who are really nice people, right? And all that stuff, with a few exceptions, I guess. But if you go see them, they're going to run you in circles. So you can't get through the door with what you're saying because you're going to get all turned around. And why do you suppose that is?
Look, I keep joking that this is the dumbest time to be alive. People have lost their minds. I mean, it's as simple as that. Like they're
listen to Father Ripperger a little bit?
Say again?
Do you ever listen to Father Ripperger?
Occasionally, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about diabolic disorientation.
Oh,
right.
Truly.
Okay. I've kind of been figuring this out because I have 5 kids and we were, daily mass, super Catholics and all that, and divorce is not going to happen to us. No way. Are you kidding? That's for bad people. But sure enough, see, because people, hurt people, right? And when you go talk to the tribunal, they say, well, it's probably not valid, so we can get you going and all that good stuff. So I'm like, okay, all right. Wait a minute. What is the deal? Something's not connecting. Okay. With the Catholic Church, every plug has a socket. Every rite has a responsibility. Every duty has a place to have a place to go with it. If you have a right, you also can vindicate your rights in court, whatever. So I use the analogy of like 2 Legos. They have to go together exactly right, and now they fit perfect. So what's happened with a lot of things in Vatican II is they go together a little bit off and they never quite stick. And that leaves all kinds of wiggle room. And this is what the problem is. So you're going up to the tribunal. You're like, these things never went together. You're calling this annulled, but it's just, and they're like, no. You, Louise, are from the backwoods and you don't understand. It's not like like this anymore.
Yeah,
It's
I
like
know.
this. We need to have room for human beings, not just law. Okay. It's
Yeah,
not
that's
like this, and this is we've opened up the windows. Dig it,
yeah.
and as you've heard,
Groovy, baby.
yeah,
Yeah.
you of course. Well,
We're
what?
stuck in 1968.
All right,
John.
all right, Groovy Louise. What year did you graduate from high school?
Say again.
What year did you graduate from high school?
Oh, should I
Can't
say?
remember that far back.
Yeah, 1987.
84. So you're the
87.
youngster here.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
right. You were 84, right?
Yeah. Okay. So anyhow, what I figured out what was going on, I found the disconnects, but again, nobody wants to own them because they cause all kinds of trouble. When
you become mean, like you're seen as the meanie. As soon as you say, well, actually, you guys are validly married, you're just going to have to carry your cross, and it's really hard.
Crucify him. No way. We don't. So this, you're exactly right. And now, so what you, okay. So what I've determined was the deal was you're right. The sacrament of marriage belongs to the church, not the state. Therefore,
Absolutely.
the separations belong to church governance, not state governance. And then also, after I got all that hashed out and figured out, and people that when did you first hear that you needed the bishop's permission to get divorced? When did you first hear that?
Oh, that's a good question, but it may even have been through hearing you. It was either through you or Bay McFarlane, probably really only in the last few years.
Right. So the same. There's plenty of people that are starting to catch on to that. Here's the other side of the coin that starts to make sense as to why these Legos aren't going together like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Is the redefinition of marriage, not in theory but in practice. So Vatican II, I call it a canon laundering service. You know what I mean? Instead of money laundering, they just canon law goes in, it gets all mixed up and comes out the other side somewhere years later, and then all the smart people say it means something different now because it's developed. The bottom line is marriage has three goods. You have to, permanence. You have to be open to kids, and fidelity, which is also known as unity. Okay, unity and fidelity are the same thing.
Yeah.
Not according to Christopher West, but that's what. So you have three goods now. So in the beginning of the 20th century, and for the whole history of the church, you had three goods to marriage. If you said "I do" to those three things, do you know how long permanent till death is? And then do you know about the birds and the bees? Do you know where babies come from? And do you know what no adultery means? Can you get that part? Okay, so then that's how you can get married. But what happened after the canon laundering Vatican II, out the other side comes a fourth good, which is good to the spouses, which is nothing more but repackaged, mutual help and remedy of concupiscence, but they call it good to the spouses now. So there ain't nothing new under the sun. It is what it is. It's just redescribed and then repracticed as, if you don't have what it takes to have that interpersonal relationship, your marriage isn't valid. So what I've concluded is we just have they've illegally added a fourth bonum in practice, but not in theory, because God can't grow a third arm. He just can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But they've put a third arm on here and said, no, it's not really a third arm. It just sort of is. And once you figure out what's going on, and they're like whack-a-mole, they run all over the place. And if you don't know this, you can't speak back to them. P.S. There's almost nobody, you'll meet people who will agree that you need the bishop's permission to divorce, but almost nobody will admit that there is no fourth bona. There is no right to interpersonal relationship, because you sound really mean. And if you got married and you plan to be a big pain in the rear to your spouse, the marriage is still valid. Marriage is marriage. And
Yeah, right.
okay, speaking of that, so now when you look for the definition of marriage in the new code, that's what essentially it says. It says marriage is marriage. That's it. It doesn't
Right.
define it. It steps
Right.
into a fuzzy room of sort of marriagey sounding stuff, but there's no definition. So it still has never been defined, but it's so entrenched now, and nobody but uneducated riffraff like me or you will
Right.
object. But there are a few other people that are, but they're so and people like you know, you understand some of it, but you're only motivated to do so much. Just like parents who have autistic kids or something, they get into that. They want to know more about it, right? But if you don't, you know, it's just something. So you have to have the eye of the tiger to kind of zero in on it. Anyway, let's see. So do you know anybody who is thinking about annulment right now?
No, actually, I did, but it was a really sad situation. Her husband actually died. So that's kind of, you know, that's just really tragic and so on. But the reason she was looking at annulment was because, you know, he was really he was really kind of a very bad man. I mean, you know, and I'm not just going by her words there. You can tell when somebody's been through the ringer, you know, with somebody who's truly bad. And I think it would be able to be proven in a court of law if she had ever, you know, because in the olden days, if a woman wanted to divorce a man before no fault divorce, she had to show that he had been cruel. She actually had to prove that he had been cruel. So
right,
know,
but so who did yes?
Yeah. That's why her situation was like that. But I don't think the marriage was invalid. You know, I don't think it was. I don't really see that there was any reason that she should have got an annulment had he lived longer. But
okay,
yeah.
So what happens is everyone talks, and talking is fine and all that, and everyone's heard lots of annulment talks and this and that and divorce and all that kind of stuff. But we have to kind of get down to brass tacks on what's going on. And the brass tacks are you can't separate without ecclesiastical authority. And if you said yes to permanence, faithfulness, and openness to life, it's valid. As you know, in other words, the rule of thumb is if you can have kids, it's valid. And so and you won't. How should I put this? You know, in some ways, you can't take your divorce with you to heaven if it wasn't good and you didn't do the right thing. The annulment doesn't whitewash it. But all these things are very, you know, nuclear. They're hard to talk about, and they have to be precise. If you just start running at the mouth, you can say things not precise, and it gets tricky. Meanwhile, though, the powers that be won't listen or talk about it. Do you know who Layla Miller is?
Yeah, sure. I read. I can't remember if I read both books, but I certainly read the one about marriages in difficulty, and that was a great book.
They are great books. I really like her, and I think her other one's good too. She just she got on a roll with what she did. Are you her friend on Facebook?
I have a feeling we might be friends on Facebook, actually, but I can't quite recall now.
She's pretty busybody out there. I mean,
Yeah.
You'd probably know it if you were. But anyway, she's blocked me pretty good. I like her. I think her mind's in the right place. But she's shut this down. Were you kind of aware of the issue of how I always called her Lila, but I guess it's Layla Miller, how she blocks you?
I didn't know that. But, I mean, that's a pretty common practice, I suppose, you know, when people find that things are just getting too hard. And I don't necessarily mean, you know, that they're not capable of arguing, but although in some cases they aren't capable, but sometimes it's just everything's so emotional right now with everyone, with everything.
Okay.
You know,
when you say what's true, it's gonna cost you. And in this case, why I'm mentioning her is no one at Catholic Answers will communicate, and no one at EWTN will. And however, Lila's out there saying, I'm not a canonist, but she's making all these canonical statements. She's essentially, she's de facto saying you can follow your conscience to file for divorce.
Right, yeah.
That's what she's saying, because she's saying if your bishop doesn't follow the law about divorce, if he ignores like your own bishop over there, if you wanted to file for divorce, he wouldn't say a thing, would he?
Oh, no.
Okay, so now you are taking a public event and making it private. You're saying, in my own brain and heart, I've decided God's cool with it.
Yeah. It's just,
even though you're trampling the rights of it doesn't make any sense. It's like going into small claims court and saying, I've decided I'm the innocent party here, and he owes me $800. And the judge says, who am I to judge?
I know.
It's not, has nothing to do with us. So you
know,
you guys work it out from yourselves. It looks like you're bigger than she is, so I guess you win. You know, or he's bigger than you are, so I guess you don't win. It's like that. So this is why publicly there has to be a innocent and a guilty spouse. So Layla means well, but she's getting all twisted up on again, because the practice is we don't touch it. And now people are saying, well, I need to get divorced to protect myself or whatever, which is a misnomer. You can protect yourself without a legal action of filing for divorce. You can walk out of the house. You can also, P.S., while I'm thinking of this, I want to get back to Layla in a minute. And there's one other thing I want to talk about, which was partnership, and I'll get there in a second. But if you need, when you're married, your stuff, spouse's stuff belongs together. The kids belong to you together, all that. So you already have rights to the money, the house, the kids. You have rights to those. So if you have one spouse who's being no good, you're allowed to sue in civil court for separate maintenance and child support.
Right.
But you're not suing for separation.
Yeah.
You're suing for maintenance.
Right.
Because you already have a right to that. You have a right to educate your kids. You need a house, you know? So you don't need to divorce ever. You just need the separate, you need to eat. Okay.
I just need to ask a question, actually, John.
Yeah.
So I know some people, I don't know the answer to this. I know some people are concerned in terms of protecting themselves financially from a malicious spouse. They say they need to divorce because the spouse could rack up lots of debts and then they would be liable for those debts. How does one legally protect oneself from that type of thing if there's not going to be, a legal divorce situation?
Well, if they're going to rack up lots of debts, that's a good question. I know the answer to it, but this is another reason why you need to do it in writing so you can think. If you don't have it, don't have it handy. Well, I know there's an answer to that, but I think what happens is you tell the judge, once you file for that, the separate maintenance, all debts become his and hers, kind of thing.
Actually, that's probably true, isn't it? They're financially separated. In other words, he, if he's going to rack up debt or she's going to rack up debt, the other one now is no longer liable.
Because you have to be. You can protect money, but you cannot. Here's the key thing that you cannot sue for. You cannot use the state to make you live in separate houses. That's what you can't do. Layla Miller says separation and divorce are different things. No, they're not. That's like saying amputation and cutting your arm off are two different things. No. Right. So divorce is a word that means separation. And when you're Catholic, it's till death. No matter what happens, marriage is till death.
Yeah.
So you can separate, and divorce is state-sponsored separation, state enforced. At the point of a gun. It's like calling the police up and say, I'm filing for divorce. Come over here with your guns. Put the gun to my spouse's head and tell him to get moving. That's what you're doing. Okay.
Oh, that happened to a friend of mine.
I'm sure it has. It happens to lots of people.
Yeah.
And you can't, like I said, you can't go out doing that stuff without an independent judge, which is the public authority. That's the bishop. So, okay. So there's ways to deal with money and support and safety. None of them have anything to do with filing for divorce.
Yeah,
Okay?
no, that is actually very true. That's definitely true here in Australia.
It's true. It's true in the States too.
Yeah.
Okay. So the church isn't dumb. The church knows what its canon law is. And even as late as 1997, over in Lincoln, Nebraska, Bishop Bruskowitz said, it's strictly forbidden to divorce without my permission.
Wow.
I've been trying to get in touch with him to ask him if he would admit that it's a sin to divorce without his permission, but you can't get to him. His sister won't let you talk to him. You cannot get to these guys.
It's just, you really got to wonder why they won't just say, well, I mean, why they won't just say what's true. Either they're cowards or they kind of don't really know because their thinking is too fuzzy because they're basically modernists. I mean,
there's a little of that. That's right, because this is dogma. It's a dogma of the faith.
It's straightforward.
Yes, it is straightforward too. So when I called Archbishop Chaput when he was back in Philadelphia, his right-hand man said, we got so much financial stuff to worry about, we're not even going to talk about this. So the annulments if you start admitting this whole annulment assembly line is not Catholic, we got a huge problem. In other words, they just can't smell the coffee and go back. It's like a recall for a whole bunch of new cars. Let's just not answer questions and not do the recall. We know there's a problem. We're just going to put out a lot of drive safe propaganda, and we're just not going to discuss it. And that's kind of what's going on. And people are getting hurt. It's very damaging because divorce is child abuse, and then therefore so is annulment, because it's pretty much Catholic divorce. It is because they all hinge on that new fourth Vatican II bonum, which is not real. It's just perceived.
Yeah.
So back to Lila, though. The only reason I mention her is because she's someone who is sincere and wants to talk about what's right with divorce, but she comes out and says all this stuff for Catholic Answers, but won't answer any questions. And you can show the basic question to her is divorce a public or private act? She has to answer that question. If she does, she will realize that if it's public, you cannot separate privately.
Right. Yeah.
It's just like admitting annulment. Is it a private or public act? Filing for annulment.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
Well, it's public, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. You cannot do, but even they do some of their own.
The vows are public. I mean, marriage is a public thing.
Yeah.
As much as it's very private.
The public authority is the bishop. So if your bishop won't hear your annulment case, what do you do?
If he won't.
Yeah, he won't. He'll say, I'm sorry, we're closed for annulments. We're just not going to hear that. We don't do that anymore. We don't do annulments. Then what do you do? If you really think your marriage isn't valid and he will not hear your annulment case?
I don't know.
You don't do anything. You don't do anything.
I was going to say but I mean that just wouldn't happen anywhere, though. I mean, they're always.
Well, that's what they're doing with divorce. It could happen, but I'm just using it as an analogy. You can't take the law into your own hands because it's divine law. That's just like saying, if I would have this, if you're pregnant, I would have this baby if I had a really good place to have the baby and stuff. But since I don't, I'm going to justify the abortion. You can't do that stuff. And so I'm asking Layla if divorce is a sin, which it is in some circumstances, is it a public or a private sin? And she is forced to say it's a private sin. And because she's saying you can take the law into your own hands. And to back it up a little bit, people say things like, well, gosh, the church used to govern that stuff, but now ever since, the papal states went away and the French Revolution, and now the state has taken over that job, so it's no longer the church. Well, no, it's a divine law as far as governing marriage. The sacraments can never go to the state. The state has an interest, but it's not a primary authority on it. It all comes from Trent. It comes from, I guess it comes from the Bible somewhere, but divine law comes from where it comes from, and you can't change it. Okay, so another thing. Okay, so back to my other Lego. Did it disappear? I forgot. Anyway, I was thinking about this, how they have to go together, but I figured out, shoot, where did my Lego prop go? It works so great. If you have two Legos that aren't quite matching like they should, there's a lot of air room in there. There's lots of places for stuff to get out, and so you're going to have, because every plug has a socket with the church, but now you have created a lot that don't have any, and one of them is there is, what do you call it? Consummation is undefined, and also that's a whole other topic. But another thing I came across recently is partnership. Canon law, I think it's 1096, says marriage is a partnership. That's the new, okay. Whereas before, in the 1917 code, in Canon 1082 of the 17 code, said marriage is a union.
Right.
So what's the difference between a union and a partnership? Legal.
Well, a union is straightforward, isn't it? And a partnership is this,
Right. It's a kindler and gentler theology of the body, and we
just love each other so much.
Yeah, right. So you have to have the interpersonal because if procreation isn't primary, we got to put the interpersonal as quote primary also, and primary no longer means one. Primary can mean 43. It's crazy. So this is another area that's blatant redefinition right in front of you. Vatican II did not redefine marriage. The new code did not redefine marriage. It used imprecise, weird words that don't mean anything in particular legally. Yeah. They didn't say the light switch used to be on and now it's off. They said the light is a good thing and sometimes people turn it on. It didn't say it is on or it is off. It just says it's there, and we like it. Light is a nice thing. Don't use fluorescent bulbs or whatever. So, that was just something just one more thing that doesn't add up. So when you start learning how you have a train that's 3 inches off both tracks now, and you can point that out and you understand it, then you can start to go back on some of these tribunals and stuff. So. Leads me to another topic of what to do when it's time to file for annulment, or when you get the annulment questionnaire in the mail, right? And it says they ask you all about everything, because it tends to be a fishing expedition for what happened. Tell me who did what and how things didn't work out, and who yelled at who and who lied to who and who didn't make the bed the right way and all that stuff. So this is all an attack on the interpersonal relationship, which you weren't capable of doing, and all that sort of stuff. But once you know that that's not part of it, you just say, no comment, not relevant to nullity. You have to, because people here's another thing. People are so vulnerable when they get exposed to divorce, and you're kind of attached to your husband and kids, and it's sort of what you know. And what if we took your kids and just moved them elsewhere, and then maybe your husband got got someone else on the side, and then you just had to go deal, and your kids started turning on you because it was too painful to go back and forth. And once you start thinking about that and watching, it's over the top. Okay. Then you've got a lot to say, because you're watching your own kids get super damaged right in real time. And that's a big deal. Yeah. Watch your kids starve to death and you can't do anything about it, kind of thing. That'll get you. So then they say, here's an annulment questionnaire. Why don't you give us your side of the story? Oh, you bet I'm going to give you my side of the story. And then if you fill it all out and you don't know all these things that I'm talking about, because you talk to everybody and they'll all say, no, you do your best. Okay, number one, there shouldn't have been a separation without permission. Number two, all the stuff on the nullity paper isn't really relevant to nullity 99% of the time. You weren't married in the church and you were baptized, there's one right there. But most of it just got started because of the new definition. And now we have the divorce and annulment culture. So there's all kinds of other bad stuff going on. Meaning marriage has gotten so messed up that there's more genuine annulments now than ever before, real annulments, because things are so goofed up that there's more people getting the culture of marriage. People can't define it, so a lot of people are getting involved in marriage not really knowing how they should do it or whatever. At any rate, what I found was what I started realizing is that there ain't nobody saying what I'm saying, really, not much. There was that guy, Dr. William Marshner, but he's older and he talks 5 times as much as I do, and it's not quite his thing, but he did write about that.
Okay.
And other than that, no, you can't find people who will say that the good of the spouse is not relevant to nullity, because Cardinal Burke's on board with it, and everybody. They all did. They all are part. Even Pope Benedict XVI. That's pretty weird. Pope Benedict. They say, we know you're having trouble and difficulties talking to the tribunal at the Rota, trying to find the find the essential element of the bonum conjugum, which is the good of the spouses. That's because there isn't one. But what they're saying is, if the good of the spouses has to be so bad that you can't have kids or something like that, and it affects something that's one of the 3 true good bona of marriage. But it's so it's so shrouded in words and confusion the way they write it. Nobody gets to the bottom of it, and everyone just gets the annulment, and everyone's doing it. So this is why it's very tricky to actually battle this. It's very slippery. It's ubiquitous. It's you versus the world, pretty much, and you're just a nobody compared to all these smarty pants people. So
exactly,
it gets nowhere. But if you know the emperor has no clothes and you don't stop, you can eventually start breaking away at their house of cards, which is well fortified. But if you can, and I feel really sad because I work at Walmart nowadays because my tailoring job is out, and you see all the broken families, and you see the single moms with the kids, and that you can tell, you can just tell, and that whole culture is just, it's no good, and it comes from the church. The church has got to lead. So if the church would just follow its own divine and canon law, then this problem would really dry up. So the church.
Well, the problem with the canon law, though, is that we need to ditch the 83 code.
Well, yes and no. We need someone to actually just, because I don't know if you knew this, but right at the end of the code, it does say, "Oh, by the way, none of this is binding." Did you know that?
None of this is what?
Binding.
Right.
So right at the end of Vatican II, it says, "Thanks y'all for coming. It's been a fun 3 years," or whatever it took.
Oh, you mean the end of Vatican II? Yeah, actually, I did know that. Yes, it was just they just wanted to get together and shoot the breeze.
Yeah, and they did, and so it's like, wow, we shot the breeze, and this is what it means, and everyone's like, cool, dude. And then it gets institutionalized. Now, when you have a lot of people operating that way, it's almost too hard to stop. In human nature, once it gets involved in it, just doesn't stop. It's sort of like trying to repeal abortion. You're going to have a riot. Because you got abortion in, you're basically Australia, or are you New Zealand? Are you New Zealand?
Yeah, Tasmania is one of the 6 states of Australia. So
okay.
Yeah.
So if and there's abortion there, no doubt. So if it got totally overturned, there would be this crazy riot, wouldn't there?
I would imagine, yeah.
Yes, because now you have a bunch of people who've been involved in sin saying that, nah. So once you have a church that's basically taken the culture of death inside and says, this is what we're going to do with all our marriages, and then you say, no, this is wrong, you've got a massive problem of obedience, and everyone's got to look in the mirror, and they just won't do it. So this is why this topic goes over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, I was going to say, John, I mean, we have to be so careful in talking about the church, don't we? Because I mean, she is holy. That's defined. That's defined teaching. And yet we've got these crazy bishops. And Hilaire Belloc had a wonderful saying about the bishops or the leadership of the church. Can I just give you the quote? It's really good.
Yeah.
It says, so this is Hilaire Belloc writing about 100 years ago. He said, "The Catholic Church is an institution I am bound to hold divine, but for unbelievers, a proof of its divinity might be found in the fact that no merely human institution conducted with such knavish imbecility would have lasted a fortnight."
Yes.
And this is perfect. And I was going to say, John, the thing with the church, I just want to say really quickly, is that so the church is holy, but Father Linus Clovis has the opinion that what we've now got is that the anti-church and the church are currently occupying the same liturgical, sacramental, and juridical space. So he says there's a church and an anti-church, or what we might call New Church, or the Church of Vatican II, whatever you want to call it, and it is attacking from within the Holy Mother Church.
And you can't figure them apart. Everyone looks the same. That's right. It gets real tricky, and it's so slip. Yes, yeah.
So that's what we're up against. I mean, you and I, if we're going to continue with this work, are going to be this is like trying to stop Niagara Falls.
It kind of, I think you're right. But God can do. And sometimes I've noticed just of course, my own, your own efforts. I've basically met with failure everywhere I've gone, pretty much, as far as trying to get the church to do something.
No, it just looks like failure, John. Just
Yes, and I'm saying that when God wants to turn the tide, He will, just like that.
Absolutely, no, it's so true.
But at the same time, part of what we're supposed. Oh, here's another Lego. Haha. Part of what we're supposed to do is, like Canon 2:12 says, you're supposed to bring things to the attention of people when they're wrong. Yeah. So yes, the church is holy. The church is spotless. The church doesn't teach error, and the church doesn't mess up canon law. But people involved in the church can say stuff, and canon law can be poetic and fuzzy.
Right.
That's not wrong. It's not error, but God's allowing the passion of the church to happen.
That's right. Yeah.
So to stay with it is some people have a hard time with that, but of course you have to. And then I hope that a nice thing with the internet, you can find out the stuff and get it out there, and then that enough people will start realizing that we don't have a marriage prep problem, we just have a definition problem.
Oh yeah, I get so annoyed when they start talking about marriage prep. I'm just like, look, it's marriage prep is not the problem. People know what they're doing when they go into marriage. What happens is that because we're sinners, one or both parties commit terrible sins against one another. And so one or both parties give up on the marriage. That's what happens. And then they go and get their lovely little annulment, and then they go and, marry in the church to their
right. And who is to judge? And that's why they have all the
and God help the poor kids. Because they're the ones
started. That's right. It's not, but they'll since kids aren't primary anymore, it's relationship and
it's just all about feeling good.
So the kind of to bring it home is you don't go to heaven if you divorce without permission. You have to follow your conscience on your annulment. Therefore, you have to inform it and realize that Vatican II did not redefine anything, because you cannot redefine God. Therefore, if your marriage would be valid before Vatican II, it's going to be valid after Vatican II. You have to use the standards from before Vatican II, not after.
Well, it has to be consistent all the way through, and it is, until we just get to the modern times and these very lax tribunals where they're just where in practice they're redefining things, even though strictly they can't do it.
In 1971, I think Cardinal Staffa, he was the head of the Signatura, just like Cardinal Burke was. He basically went over to Amsterdam and told all those guys, knock this off. You guys are doing this new Vatican II annulment stuff. You can't do it. It's a doctrinal error. It's caused you can't do it. And they just did it anyway. And they kept going. And no one can stop it. Or no, they can stop it. They won't stop it. So it takes people who are outside of the system, so to speak, to mention, because if you're in it, it's too hard. Oh boy, I could go on and on. But anyway,
Yeah.
So I forgot what else I was going to say too. Hopefully, I know Layla Miller she's kind of with us on the annulment deal about how Dr. William Marshner is correct and Vatican II has not redefined anything. It's wordplay, and that there is only she's got that down. I wish I could talk to her. I wish she could talk to me.
Yeah.
Because if we could get on the same page, that would be good because she has a kind of a good platform and but she'd have to correct all her books and her Catholic Answers things, and the bishop wouldn't like her. Do you think I'm wrong about anything, Louise?
No. I mean, there was just one thing I was going to point out, like when we're talking about being able to have children, as being like, that doesn't mean, for instance, that anybody who's naturally infertile isn't validly married.
Marriage means you're open to
act. About that. It's about the intention of having children if provided both parties are fertile. But we understand that, so, but just wanted to confirm that idea.
Right.
But yeah, no, but really, you're spot on. And I mean, basically you just need to keep hammering away at this, and so do I. And anybody else who wants to take up the baton. And I guess we just have to pray and hope that we'll gain some momentum and what have you, and that God will do whatever he wants, whatever he needs to do to fix the situation,
Yeah, and I think it is good though to drive home that point that yes, Vatican II did not change the definition of marriage one bit. But everyone kind of acts as though it did, and they use a bunch of words. Oh, we never even talked about consummation, but that takes a while. Anyway, because consummation isn't defined in the new code, logically it takes until death to consummate your marriage, because you have to give of yourself for the whole of life. See, it's the whole of life now. Dig it? They mix the words around so much. I even had the tribunal admit that to me in writing. They said consummation takes the life of the marriage. Yeah. Yeah,
whereas actually it's a moment.
Not anymore, because consent has been practically redefined, and the object of consent. So that's the key. The object of consent is acts for generation of children. That's it. Yeah. That's why I use that analogy with Timothy Flanders. If I'm going to borrow $5, the object of consent is the $5 bill in my hand.
Yeah.
Not in your hand, in my hand. You lend it to me. So that's the object of consent, that $5 bill. But now we've added existential, interpersonal feelings to that transaction. And
how do you feel about this, John?
That can take a while to build those feelings up. So the consummation of the loan never really is complete till it's complete, which is can take a lifetime.
Yeah, I was going to say, where else does this sort of thinking apply? I mean, it certainly doesn't apply in finance, does it?
No, it wouldn't work a bit. I don't feel like I did that transaction. No, you can come up with all kinds of different analogies. But anyway, okay. It is true then that every United States and probably Australian bishop is a material heretic.
I think so. I can't contradict you there. No.
Some in Africa might not be, because they say, you can't go to communion if you divorce without permission. Communion, but in the English speaking world, they all do say you can, and it's divine law, it's dogma. So that's a big deal, because there are bishops, there's quote good bishops out there and all, but even all those good bishops that speak English, all of them are material here, every single one, like no exception. And that's the weird part. That's the weird part. So trying to just so you say stuff like that, everyone's like, you must be nuts. Well, no, it's just it's really that bad.
Oh, it really is that bad. I mean, I just think I don't know. Do you know of any bishop on the face of this earth who is actually Catholic, who isn't a material heretic? Do you know one? I mean, I can't think of any.
I can't think of one, but I know there's some in Nigeria and probably Eritrea. and
Okay.
Sri Lanka,
Yeah.
and maybe Nepal.
Are you sure about this?
No, but I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some like they're out that they don't play with the divorce.
Okay.
But no, I think that in all the tribunals, pretty much everywhere in the world, they get the definition. That's so weird. But you know what? I forgot which saint was the one who battled all the Aryans. He says you wake up and find the whole world Aryan.
No, it was Athanasius, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So Athanasius against the world or whatever. There's just a lot of these bishops that they got going with it, and it's a long topic, and it is very slippery, like I found out. So your kids are awfully well behaved. Did you tell them to go clean the roof or something?
No, they're just in the next room. I don't know. They're playing with Lego. You were talking about your Lego, and
okay,
or they're watching TV or something.
Perfect. Well, they're going to run out of stuff in a minute. All right. Well, that's good. This was lots of fun. I hope it worked. I haven't checked to see if it actually went on YouTube, but it should.
No, we'll have to see it. Well, it does say live. I can see. So hopefully it's working.
Yeah, I think the whole thing worked fine. So that was nice. Maybe we'll find someone else, or I'll see who else to interview or something. And what I want to do also is find somebody. Well, that's the other thing. Someone to debate, someone who would actually say I'm wrong. Because Timothy Flanders, he put people. He was talking to me for months and months. Did you see that Timothy Flanders video we did?
I did, yeah. It was good.
Months and months. He's like, does anyone think John Farrell's wrong? Can anyone come on the show and say this guy is wrong? Nobody.
Yeah,
the whole world. I was like, okay, there's got to be something. No. And that's why I offered the $10,000 if you can show why nullity pertains, or the good of the spouses pertains to nullity. And $10,000 if you can show why you no longer need the bishop's permission to divorce.
Yeah.
Nobody will even so you're right, but it's just a conspiracy of silence on the thing. And the problem is the kids are the ones, the innocent spouses and the kids suffer, and no one can speak up for them. No one is.
No, that's right. They're basically abandoned.
Yes. And they have no voice, and then they're told a bunch of confusing things. Your heart and your mind are made for truth. And when all you get is something that doesn't quite sound right, but it's coming from everybody you know. Yeah. That gets weird. That's why I say
it's massive gaslighting, isn't it? It's just gaslighting.
I guess you're right.
Yeah, it is. It's on a grand scale. It's very scary to be in it.
Yes, you think of like kids who do people who do mass shootings at high schools and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's called I'm going to get real with the truth here because I'm mad. I'm not addressed with what I'm talking, and you've given me drugs growing up and stuff, and I'm basically going to say the heck with all this. It's time to start shooting. In other words, they never were gotten to the bottom of things, the injustice or what's right and wrong, but it's a painful thing. So that all voices will give you the error, and it's painful to face the error, so they just go with the error, and they try to internalize it, and they never. It gets real tricky, and that's why I use that. I made up a phrase called Catholic zombies. That's you kind of become, because to get to the truth, like Father Ripperger says, can be brutal.
No, that's so true. I mean, what you were saying there about the mass shooters, I believe there's quite a connection. You don't know about whether I'm not talking about causation necessarily, but I think there's a high correlation between mass shooters being children of divorce.
I think they all are. I think that's.
I think they may all be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that looks like the factor. The thing that's pushing these kids over the edge.
So people say, well, we need better marriage prep and more theology of the body. We need to keep the chemistry alive with the spouses, and it's like no. We just have to put the lock back in wedlock.
I know.
The only person with the key is the bishop.
Yeah, right.
He's got the key to let if we need an adjustment on the living arrangement, but that's it. And there's no lock, so there's no reason to say wedlock. Therefore, there's no marriage. You could get an annulment if you wanted to, because your husband's a little bit mixed up sometimes, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
I thought so. I could tell, and so because it's obviously affected you, and so he's got some interpersonal issues, and there's got to be a syndrome in there somewhere. So
right.
If you have a syndrome or if you have issues, you cannot give yourself totally.
Well, I know you can't give yourself.
Total gift, total gift of self. Where's my total gift of self? I didn't like the way. Doesn't exist. Not valid. And you can find a tribunal who will say, okay.
Like my cooking. I don't like, his hobbies.
No,
we're not compatible. We're not compatible.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah,
so anyway, I do hope to even guys like Michael Voris and stuff doesn't want to touch this much, and I could go on a long list of people. I've tried everybody. Yeah. And they basically will all say either no or go away. But there is one cat lawyer I've been talking to who, sorry?
I was going to say, that's true. I tried to publish a very brief article once called The Sacred Cow of Annulment. And it's all about how nobody wants to deal with the sacred, it's a sacred cow, we don't want to.
Right, because it's personal. You don't know, you can't judge. I trust my tribunal and I trust my bishop.
And do you think anyone would publish it? No. And it's good writing. There's nothing wrong with my writing.
When did you write it?
Oh, a few years ago.
Okay.
And we did actually, we did discuss it, John. And of course, there's been a lot of discussion on Bay McFarlane's Defending Marriage group.
Yeah. Do you ever get on those talks?
I did. And then for some reason, then they had to change the group venue or something, and I haven't been able to get back onto it since, unfortunately. But anyway, but no, that was really good. But no, nobody would touch this thing, and I just think this because there's so many Catholics. This is because the United States leads the way with the English-speaking Catholics, and the Catholics with all the money have got annulments. So there you go.
Yeah, people say follow the money. It's not like they make a lot of money with annulments. They probably lose money.
No, they don't. But the point is, the people with the money have got annulments, right?
Well, I'm saying it keeps the status quo going. If you start saying no annulments, then you have to start denying communion for people who are public sinners. Now, almost nobody can go to communion because there's all kinds of public sin going on, and then you have to start having Canon 915 and all this stuff. So, kind of overnight, a huge percentage of your Catholic population goes elsewhere. And the bishops are like, no, we're just going to love them and keep them going. And this is where the money part is. They want to keep people going. And you want to get married? Good. You want some annulments? That's good too. And, okay.
That's terrible.
All right. Well, it's been fun. And thanks for coming on. I think this worked out fine, and we'll see what develops next. But it's just good to talk to a kindred spirit there, and that sounds like you're just thinking normal, huh? That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, till we get back to you on Facebook or whatever. Thank you.
Okay.
God
See you
bless.
then, Jim.
Bye.
Bye.